Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. This is Storytime, Murder and Mystery. Today, I will tell you about Albert Fish, also known as the Boogey Man. Hamilton Howard, Albert Fish, was born on May 19, 1870. He was an American serial killer, rapist, child molester, and cannibal who committed at least 3 child murders from July 1924 to June 1928. Fish was a suspect in at least 5 murders during his lifetime. He confessed to 3 murders that police were able to trace to a known homicide, and he confessed to stabbing at least 2 other people. Fish once boasted that he had children in every state, and at one time stated his number of victims was about 100. However, it is not known whether he was referring to rapes or cannibalization, nor is it known if the statement was truthful. On May 25, 1928, Fish saw a classified advertisement in the Sunday edition of the New York World that read, "Young man, 18, wishes position in country." Edward Budd, 406 West 15th Street. On May 28, Fish, then 58 years old, visited the Budd family in Manhattan under the pretense of hiring Edward. He later confessed that he planned to tie Edward up, mutilate him, and leave him to bleed to death. Fish introduced himself as Frank Howard, a farmer from Farmingdale, New York. He promised to hire Bud and his friend Willie, and said he would send for them in a few days. Fish failed to show up, but he sent a telegram to the Bud family apologizing and set a later date. When Fish returned, he met Edward's younger sister, 10-year-old Grace Budd. He apparently shifted his amorous intentions toward Grace and quickly made up a story about having to attend his niece's birthday party. He convinced the parents, Delia Flanagan and Albert Budd, to let Grace accompany him to the party that evening. Fish subsequently took Grace to an abandoned house he had previously picked out to use for the murder of his next victim. There, he murdered and ate the girl. The police arrested 66-year-old Superintendent Charles Edward Pope on September 5, 1930, as a suspect in Grace's disappearance, accused by Pope's estranged wife. He spent 108 days in jail between his arrest and trial, on December 22, 1930. He was found not guilty. In November 1934, an anonymous letter was sent to Grace's parents which ultimately led the police to Fish. Mrs. Budd was illiterate and could not read the letter herself, so she had her son read it to her. The unaltered letter, complete with Fish's misspellings and grammatical errors, reads, "My dear Mrs. Budd, in 1894 a friend of mine shipped as a deckhand on the steamer Tacoma, Captain John Davis. They sailed from San Francisco to Hong Kong, China. On arriving there he and 2 others went ashore and got drunk. When they returned the boat was gone. At that time there was a famine in China. Meat of any kind was from $1 to $3 a pound. So great was the suffering among the very poor that all children under 12 were sold to the butchers to be cut up and sold for food in order to keep others from starving. A boy or girl under 14 was not safe in the street. You could go in any shop and ask for steak, chops, or stew meat. Part of the naked body of a boy or girl would be brought out and just what you wanted cut from it. The boy or girl's behind, which is the sweetest part of the body and sold as veal cutlet, brought the highest price. John stayed there so long he acquired a taste for human flesh. On his return to NY he stole 2 boys, 1 7, 1 11. Took them to his home, stripped them naked, tied them in a closet, then burned everything they had on. Several times every day and night he spanked them, tortured them, to make their meat good and tender. First he killed the 11-year-old boy, because he had the fattest ass and of course the most meat on it. Every part of his body was cooked and eaten except head, bones and guts. He was roasted in the oven, all of his ass boiled, broiled, fried, stewed. The little boy was next, went the same way. At that time I was living at 409 E 100th Street, rear, right side. He told me so often how good human flesh was I made up my mind to taste it. On Sunday, June 3, 1928 I called on you at 406 W 15th Street. Brought you pot cheese, strawberries. We had lunch. Grace sat in my lap and kissed me. I made up my mind to eat her, on the pretense of taking her to a party. You said yes, she could go. I took her to an empty house in Westchester I had already picked out. When we got there, I told her to remain outside. She picked wildflowers. I went upstairs and stripped all my clothes off. I knew if I did not I would get her blood on them. When all was ready I went to the window and called her. Then I hid in a closet until she was in the room. When she saw me all naked, she began to cry and tried to run downstairs. I grabbed her and she said she would tell her mama. First I stripped her naked. How she did kick, bite and scratch. I choked her to death, then cut her in small pieces so I could take my meat to my rooms, cook and eat it. How sweet and tender her little ass was roasted in the oven. It took me 9 days to eat her entire body. I did not fuck her, though, I could have had I wished. She died a virgin. Police investigated the letter. The story concerning Captain Davis and the famine in Hong Kong could not be verified. The part of the letter concerning the murder of Grace, however, was found to be accurate in its description of the kidnapping and subsequent events, although it was impossible to confirm whether or not Fish had actually eaten parts of Grace's body. Fish was apprehended on December 13, 1934, and put on trial for the kidnapping and murder of Grace Budd. None of the jurors doubted that Fish was insane, but ultimately, as one later explained, they felt he should be executed anyway. They found him to be sane and guilty, and the judge sentenced the defendant to death by electrocution. Fish arrived at prison in March 1935, and was executed on January 16, 1936, in the electric chair at Sing Sing. He entered the chamber at 11:06 p.m. and was pronounced dead 3 minutes later. He was buried in the Sing Sing prison cemetery. Fish is said to have helped the executioner position the electrodes on his body. His last words were reportedly, "I don't even know why I'm here." Thank you for your time. Please remember to like, subscribe and share. Bye.